In the land of Stonehenge, a mystery refuses to die. Hoaxers have claimed responsibility for some crop circles, and yet they continue to appear in seemingly superhuman proportions all around the world. Are they alien landing sites? Messages from a higher intelligence? Evidence of weird weather patterns? Or history's greatest practical joke?
Well, the aliens put it there.
Other civilizations evolved on this planet many tens of thousands of years ago, and some of them are returning.
There's nothing, it's just fattened crop, that's all it is. Fattened crop and overactive imaginations.
If you were someone in a UFO and you wanted to leave a message, wouldn't you go to the lawn of the White House and make a crop circle?
We join a trio of artists as they create their own circle and take a hard look at the evidence, the eerie orbs of light that accompany crop circles, strange changes in the plants themselves, and electrical equipment gone haywire as science and the supernatural collide down on the farm. Wiltshire in the West Country is a land of lush rolling hills, vast farms, and mysteries both ancient and modern. It's Druid country and the home to many prehistoric monuments. For thousands of years, people have felt that this place was sacred and responded with ritual and reverence. Ancient Britons built massive, mysterious circles like Stonehenge, but today, circles of a different kind are cropping up in these fields. In the shadow of an ancient monument called Silbury Hill, farmer David Hughes tends his crops at Galtymore Farm. And Hughes is not a happy man.
It's nonsense. It really is big nonsense. I just can't tell you enough how stupid these people are. I really can't.
At eye level, there's little to indicate what's riling him. But from above, it's a different story. Someone or something has been wreaking havoc with his crops. It's an attractive havoc, to be sure, but for the farmer, it means a lot of unsalvageable wheat.
It's costing us money and we're getting nothing out of it. If it was the other way round, how would they actually like me to come into their garden and trample down their flower bed and say that it came from aliens?
If believers in the paranormal are right, Hughes is being plagued by a phenomenon that's been around for centuries. They point to a wood carving from 1678 called the Mowing Devil, which seems to depict the creation of a crop circle in England. But it wasn't until the 1970s and 80s that crop circles began hitting the news again. At first, they were simple, small single circles, 10 to 12 meters in diameter. But as the years went by, they began to spring up in increasing numbers and complexity. And thousands of paranormal enthusiasts flocked to see them. By 1991, a minor craze had seized Wiltshire. Then suddenly, it was brought to a halt.
I'm Dave Chorley, this is Doug Barr, and we are the two people that created the crop circles in 1978.
Artists Doug and Dave made their first circles on a whim, hoping to create something that looked like a UFO landing pad. Believers in paranormal activity took the bait. Doug and Dave could never have predicted the kind of response their artwork would provoke in the public's imagination. Books appeared and tourists mobbed the landscape. When they went public in 1991, they revealed how easy it was to make circles. Their demonstration took some of the wind out of the believers' sails, but only briefly. The trouble was, Doug and Dave couldn't possibly have made all of the crop circles themselves. There were too many of them, too far apart. Almost 3,000 crop circles, hundreds of them outside of Britain, have appeared since 1978. In most cases, no one has claimed credit, which has only fueled speculation about who or what could be making them. While most people now agree that some crop circles are man-made, they agree on very little else. There are skeptics who are convinced that all crop circles are man-made.
People have said, oh, well, two men couldn't have done all. No, of course two men couldn't have done all of them, because other people found out what was happening and said, hey, that's a good stunt.
You turn on the television and the radio, you open the books and magazines, it's this great mystery with all these scientists completely baffled. But the emperor has no clothes, there's nothing, it's just fattened crop, that's all it is. Fattened crop and overactive imaginations.
Then there are the crop circle makers, who come from many different camps. Some enjoy toying with people's minds, some are commercial artists.
I'm not a skeptic and I'm not a believer, I'm an artist, and that's kind of why I make crop circles.
Some believe their circular art actually creates paranormal phenomena.
Great universal intelligence is looking down on us tonight. Please give us the inspiration that we require to complete this circle.
And finally, there are those who believe that some circles are definitely not made by man. Some try to study the soil and plants scientifically, some detect strange conscious energies in the circles, and some see the patterns as signs from UFOs. To many, the evidence couldn't be more obvious.
Skeptics, it's very difficult to know where their head is actually at. You know, it's trying to ask a cod what it thinks of London. You know, that's how brain dead a lot of them are.
You know, we were so fed up with hearing about the debunking constantly. It's all a hoax, it's all a joke. Well, we'd all seen enough to convince us that wasn't the case.
Andy Thomas is a founding member of Southern Circular Research and editor of the website swirlednews.com. He's been researching and writing about crop circles since 1991.
Well, I remember the first crop circle I ever saw was just sort of in the distance. There was something that went dong in there, and I just knew that sort of my destiny was somehow being rewritten. There was just something so mysterious about it that called to me.
Thomas has observed and measured hundreds of crop circles over the years, and he's also been involved in experiments trying to influence their creation. These have convinced him that something's definitely out there, and it's watching us.
One experiment I was involved in back in 1995, we sat up on a hillside. We had a certain shape that we hoped might arrive as a result of this experiment. We meditated, we focused our minds on this shape, imagining it appearing as a crop circle. We then found out that that night, exactly that shape that we had drawn appeared as a crop circle in our local area where we'd done the experiment. Now, nobody knew what we were doing. It was carried out in secrecy. We didn't make it. How did it get there? What were the odds? What was the coincidence of that? There's a lot of evidence that this is an interactive phenomenon, almost as if something's listening in on your shoulder, or we are throwing something out there which is then manifesting in the fields for real.
Whatever it is manifesting in the fields, it seems to be generating strange energies. First-hand accounts tell of fresh batteries going dead, cameras malfunctioning, and compasses refusing to work. Paul Weigay says he's witnessed this himself. A computer programmer, he's dedicated much of his free time to crop circles. Paul was in a circle near David Hughes' farm one day when his mobile phone stopped working.
I thought, well, that was odd because it was working just now. I went to the edge of the crop circle, literally held the phone at arm's length over the crop, and the meter on the phone went up to full signal strength. Brought it back in the circle and there was no signal. And you almost got tingles down your back thinking, yeah, there's something strange here.
But what is it? Paul Weigay suggests it's a form of energy that science has yet to discover. Andy Thomas, on the other hand, suspects the presence of some sort of intelligence. But Reg Presley has his own ideas. He's the lead singer of the Trogs, a group which hit it big in the 1960s with Wild Thing, and he's a long-time follower of crop circles. And Reg doesn't mind using the U word, UFO. But he has some alternative theories as well.
We rush to say that it's from outer space, But it could be people in our future that have learned how to time travel, and maybe this is a critical period in our evolution when they're coming back to find out what they can do to just tilt it a bit or put it right or something like that. You don't know.
The question often asked is, why don't crop circles form in front of witnesses? One of the most compelling arguments that crop circles are man-made is the shyness factor. They only appear when no one's looking. Statistician Ted Clay has never visited a crop circle. Instead, he's a cyber detective, analysing crop circles via the internet. But even from thousands of miles away, he sees human fingerprints all over the formations.
There's one really big reason to say you should be suspicious of crop circles is that they occur at night. If the purpose was to get our attention and to send us a message, wouldn't it be more effective to get our attention by doing it right smack in front of us in broad daylight? Why is it always seeming to be created out of view, out of sight?
Reg Presley has his own explanation for the shyness factor, an understandable reluctance on the part of superior beings to rub shoulders with us violent primitives.
I love gorillas, but I wouldn't get in a cage with one. I don't think they're going to get in a cage with us because we've had people shooting at them, farmers shooting with shotguns, especially in America where they're allowed to have guns, you know. No, I don't think we're a happy bunch for them to even mix with.
Are they formed by UFOs? Time travelers from the future? An amorphous intelligence? An undiscovered energy? Or are they simply the result of mischievous human nature?
They're getting more and more complicated. Now, are the people in the UFOs getting smarter? Are they getting more artistic? Is their message getting more complicated? And really, if you were someone in a UFO and you wanted to leave a message, wouldn't you go to the lawn of the White House and make a crop circle?
We're about to take a hard look at the evidence.
This is amazing.
Later, we'll investigate one of the most sensational pieces of evidence to date, in which balls of light seem to create a crop circle in broad daylight. We'll also examine the findings of a research centre that claims to have documented unusual damage to the flattened crops. But first, we'll explore some strange encounters of the crop circle kind. Crop circles certainly have power over human beings. Power to delight, to astonish, and some say even to heal. But is that power of this world or another? Paul Weigay has an unusual hobby. He takes electromagnetic readings from vegetables, flowers, and grain. It's this pastime that first sparked off his 12-year obsession with crop circles.
When I started out, I was fairly sceptical about the whole subject, but my mother had always been sort of had an interest in the paranormal, I suppose you'd call it. I went to visit one day with this little electronic measuring meter I'd made, and for a bit of a gimmick, I was touching it on some corn stalks she'd got hanging up. I was quite surprised to find I'd got different readings on different stalks, and she was quite amazed by this and got me to go in the other room while she muddled them up again. I came back in, sort of same type of readings on different stalks, and she got even more amazed. And eventually I said, well, come on, let me in on the secret. And she said that all the ones that there'd been no reading whatsoever on had come from a crop circle that she had visited, and all the others were from just ordinary crop.
This inspired Paul to dig deeper, and after years of compiling strange readings, he's sure he's found a pattern. Flattened crops possess weak electrical charges, whereas upright crops are more energized. Paul sees the paranormal in these measurements, but Ted Clay sees the perfectly normal.
It comes as no surprise to me that you would pick up electrical differences between outside and inside a crop circle. I mean, standing wheat is kind of like a little lightning rod, and electrical charges tend to focus on the top, and it's going to be different from the electrical properties of wheat that's laying flat. But it doesn't tell you anything about how the crop circle was made, These are just characteristics of flattened wheat, flattened anything.
But not all observations of crop circles are so easily dismissed. Some crop circle enthusiasts say that no human could create some of these massive formations in a short English summer night. And they point to anecdotes about formations occurring in broad daylight in a matter of minutes.
There was a famous formation in 1996 opposite Stonehenge. It appeared within a period of 45 minutes in broad daylight.
It happened on a flight over Wiltshire. On the first leg of the flight, the pilot and his passenger passed over Stonehenge. They saw nothing unusual in the surrounding fields. The pilot landed at a local airstrip to refuel, and just 25 minutes later was in the air again. But this time, he spotted an enormous formation. It contained 151 circles, one of the largest and most complex formations ever made. Believers insist that there is no way the pilot and passenger could have missed such a large formation, but skeptics think differently.
Well, what I've heard of the story of the Stonehenge flyover is that they circled around Stonehenge. If you're circling around Stonehenge, what do you suppose you're looking at? You're looking at Stonehenge. Now, if there was a crop formation right here, it'd be pretty hard to be looking at Stonehenge and not also see the crop circle right here. But if it's way down here, it's a lot more difficult to be looking at both at the same time.
Another form of evidence used to counter the argument that all crop circles are man-made is the infamous ball of light, or BOL. Believers often cite them as proof of otherworldly intervention.
I myself saw the so-called balls of light, and they were, well, literally these glowing spheres of light sort of sailing above the fields. Later on that same week, we experienced these strange black flickering shapes, and they were utterly bizarre. They were like these sort of black strobing effects that you could see them going, and they were absolutely terrifying, I have to say.
Balls of light have not only been witnessed, they've been caught on film above and around the fields that play host to crop circles. In July of 1990, photographer Steve Alexander decided to investigate crop circles for himself. He took his video camera and began to film. Suddenly, a floating light caught his attention. This is what he videotaped. It could have been an optical illusion, a video malfunction, or even a white bird over the field. But there was an independent witness. A farmhand was driving his tractor that day when he saw what he described as a shiny, bright object fly over him, then disappear. What it was remains a mystery to this day. But the most sensational piece of evidence, the one that comes closest to hard proof for some believers, appeared in 1996. It seemed to conclusively show the link between balls of light and crop circles.
There's a couple of lights down there somewhere.
On this video, balls of light move over a field below an Iron Age fort known as Oliver's Castle, and apparently trigger the creation of a snowflake pattern in the field. It was every believer's dream come true. The Oliver's Castle video seemed to be the definitive piece of evidence. But within days, doubts began to grow, and the debate over the tape's authenticity continues to this day. Later, we'll get a behind-the-scenes look at this famous video, and we'll create our own balls of light for the camera. We'll see if you can tell which ones are ours, and which are the so-called real thing. If the skeptics are right, for the past 3 decades, increasing numbers of us have been giving up a summer night's sleep, all for the sake of art, or a giant practical joke. Could humans really have made all these circles under cover of darkness in only a few hours? And if so, why? We're about to meet the circle makers. They come from a surprising number of different camps. Some do it as a hoax, others to instigate paranormal experiences, and yet others for art and money. First, the circle makers who know it's all a hoax. 14 years ago, Dr. Robin Allen and Chris Nash joined up with some like-minded college students to have some fun with crop circles. They decided that the simplest way to find out if humans were making the circles was to make one themselves. They had a few practice runs in daylight. Then they took to the fields at night.
We started making circles in 1991. We made about 3 then. We kept going back year after year. They're getting bigger and more complex. I think we probably made about 50 or 60 in the end.
Repeatedly, the circles they made were cited as authentic paranormal formations by crop circle experts. Today, Chris and Robin examine the handiwork of the star-shaped formation on David Hughes' farm. In their eyes, signs of its human origins are obvious. You just have to want to find them.
So you can actually reverse engineer how a formation was made by looking at the construction lines.
The circles may look complicated, but they're based on simple geometry. One maker stands at a central point, while another walks around him with a set length of line or measuring tape. This forms the rim of the circle. To create the first corner of the square, they measure out a set distance from the circle's edge to a point along the tractor line. From that point, they use the same rope that created the circle and run it back along the edge. This takes them to the base of the next corner. From here, it's just a matter of repeating the same measurements. When it comes to the interior ornamentation, the makers can do whatever takes their fancy. Robin and Chris made circles for fun, but discovered that they were simply feeding the craze. While knocking down wheat, they left bands and weave patterns that believers thought no human could make.
You get this so-called feathering effect, which used to be deemed a mark of authenticity. That just happens when you flatten stuff with the board, it just goes into the side. We found at one fell swoop that actually virtually all of these features are just artifacts of the manufacture.
We weren't doing this deliberately, and it was the experts who came in the following day and found all these things, like all the other genuine circles, as they would say.
We used a garden roller mostly. We also used our feet, used our hands, and we used body rolling. We just rolled around, and they couldn't tell the difference.
Chris and Robin hung up their stalk stompers in 1999. After nearly 10 years as circle makers, the thrill was gone.
I was just disillusioned with the fact it was no longer a challenge to beat.
While one generation has moved on, another even more diverse group has taken its place. Some of these newcomers are even believers of a sort. This is Matthew Williams. He views crop circles as provisional temples and believes that circles, specifically his circles, actually generate paranormal phenomena. Before he starts work, he calls on a higher power.
Great universal intelligence is looking down on us tonight. Please give us the inspiration that we require to complete this circle. Also, please give us protection whilst we are working in the fields tonight. And also, can this formation be instilled with energy that will inspire people who look upon it, and also give healing to those that might enter this formation. Amen.
Out in the fields at night, Matthew has had experiences that he can't explain. Unknowingly, he once created a circle that believers said they had visualized.
And I got the inspiration to go out on my own one night, just as a single circle maker, and actually put this formation within a couple of 100 feet of the people who are asking for it.
Like many believers, Matthew has also seen strange balls of light in the circles, and they've left him baffled.
I still don't know to this day, and me and my friends, still talk about that.
Matthew's spiritual circles have got him into trouble in the past. He was arrested and fined after admitting to one formation, earning the singular honor of having a criminal record for making circles. But why would anyone risk arrest to make a crop circle?
My observation is that it's a unique manifestation of male energy. it's kind of adolescent, but I can relate to it. You know, I think there's a part of any guy willing to go out in the middle of the night and sweat and get dirty to make it happen.
It's because it fulfills a need they have. They want a little excitement in their lives. And you'd be surprised at what people will do to make sure they get into the newspapers or get interviewed or can show up on the edge of the crowd while people are all looking at this wonder. They get a big kick out of this. This is something that's worth a lot of work.
For years, believers trailed suspected circle makers in hopes of catching them in the act. They bought night vision equipment, set up stakeouts, and tailed suspects. The believers never caught anyone red-handed, and the animosity between the two camps deepened. But making circles and running circles around believers isn't just a strange hobby. People can make money doing it. One group has created so many circles, they've made a business out of it.
Our group's called Circle Makers, but I think some of the researchers refer to us as Team Satan.
These artists are demonized because they don't hide the fact that they are cashing in on crop circles. They claim to be tops in the crop circle making field and charge accordingly. To find out if they're as good as they think they are, we're going to put them to the test. Crop circles began to make news in the 1970s and were just what you'd expect, simple circles. Then, with time, they grew in size and complexity.
People have pointed out that crop circles have gotten more complex over time. I think they're following our culture, not leading it. During the 80s, fractal geometry became a big thing. Fractal geometry hit the crop circle field in the early 90s. You start to see things that look very digital, very much like pixels, just as we're starting to use computers and have computer monitors a lot.
Today, some believers in the paranormal argue that many crop circles are just too big and intricate for people to create in a few hours. We'll see if a three-man team of artists can produce a complex formation in under 5 hours, about the length of an English summer night. They'll be doing it in a field of our choosing.
Actually, the best way to do this is actually to stomp in 4 foot. And that then becomes...
Using the latest computer software, the circle makers have plotted out a square spiraling formation. At first glance, it looks simple, but no one's ever tried this pattern before, and with good reason. After they mark off the exterior circle, they'll have to work their way in toward the center. They must make every corner turn at exactly 90 degrees, and each line must be perfectly straight. If not, their errors will be compounded as they spiral inward, and they'll end up with a lopsided mess instead of a perfect square. To get around a field without leaving marks, they follow tractor or tram lines.
No, you do not step in any crop that is standing ever, under any circumstances.
Their tools are simple. A few stakes to mark off key points, surveyor's tape, and specially made stalk stompers. Coming into Wiltshire in broad daylight is risky for the circle makers. Farmers despise them because of the damage they cause. And many believers hate them simply because they make circles. How does that make them feel? But sometimes it's no laughing matter. In 1998, the circle makers were hired to make a formation for a commercial, legally and in broad daylight. But when believers found out, all hell broke loose. First they hurled abuse, then they hurled rocks. The circle makers escaped unscathed, but it taught them to give believers a wide berth.
You can't win with the researchers, really. I mean, they kind of hate and loathe us, whatever we're doing.
Despite their money-loving reputation, the circle makers are first and foremost artists who do most of their work anonymously under the cover of night. It's a risky practice because every time they go into a farmer's field without permission, they're committing a crime.
You know, what you have here is a slight degree of adrenaline that you get when you're making circles in darkness. And you know you have to be out of the field before the sun starts to rise. And so things just happen quicker, I think, because there's more of a kind of psychological pressure on you to get it finished.
Once their eyes adjust to the dark, they can see well enough to work. On occasion, a believer or farmer stumbles upon them, and they have to put an escape plan into action.
John, Rod, down.
At the first sign of danger, they head to a designated meeting point in the tram lines. Then they bide their time until the coast is clear. If they do have to leave the field, they face other hazards. Some can catch them by the seat of their pants.
Some of the risks involved are electric fences and barbed wire. I've lost a few pairs of trousers to barbed wire over the years. And cows as well. You've got to watch cows because they can stampede, and that can be pretty scary and funny as well, actually, afterwards.
They're not those kind of docile creatures that they appear to be in the day. They transform into kind of, you know, rural juggernauts.
Back on David Hughes' farm, the circle makers are 3 hours into their formation. Now it's just a matter of measuring and getting their 90-degree turns perfect. But can they finish the circle in time? Today, the circle makers are working out in the open for cold, hard cash. But usually, they take no credit for their work.
We've never claimed a formation, and we never will. Because, you know, as soon as you do claim a formation, you just drain it of all of its power. And because they're oracleists, people can then project their own kind of, you know, realities and imaginations and belief systems onto the circles. And, you know, we very much want to perpetuate the circles phenomenon.
The circle maker creates it in secret. The believer responds to it, and the circle maker feeds off that energy. It's a complete, self-contained circle. One art critic commented that whoever or whatever made them is an artist of genius. In under 5 hours, our landscape geniuses completed their square spiraling formation. The circle maker's job is done, for now.
Okay, guys, that's it. It's finished.
They've proved that they can easily make a complex circle overnight.
Time for a drink, I think.
But just because the circle makers can make these formations doesn't prove all circles are man-made. It's time for science to enter the ring and try to settle the debate. We'll ask the experts about physical changes that occur in the plants. And we'll take a hard look at the balls of light that seem to appear around the formations. To prove that crop circles are not all man-made, believers have been turning more and more to what they consider hard evidence. The world's leading crop circle research group has been gathering samples for 14 years. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, not far from the hallowed halls of Harvard and MIT, is BLT Research. Nancy Talbot is the T in BLT. She's not a scientist, but she coordinates the gathering and testing of samples from crop circles. With 13 professional consultants in fields like chemistry and aeronautical engineering, BLT has compiled a huge amount of data.
I know that there is something which will enlarge our concept of reality by studying this, that we'll learn more things. We'll learn more than we know now about what we call reality.
BLT has published 3 papers about crop circles in 2 scientific journals. One study seemed to document that wheat seeds from inside crop circles developed at a different rate to seeds from outside. Another study analysed the presence of a strange iron glaze in one circle, a study clouded by the fact that hoaxers claim to have scattered iron shavings around the site. But most of BLT's research has focused on the plants themselves, and specifically the nodes, the hard, knuckle-like parts of the plant.
Perhaps the most critical of those early discoveries is the finding of elongated nodes, downed plants from inside the crop circles. They are markedly stretched, elongated. The man-made formations do not show this change. It's the best documented parameter that we have so far, and the most consistent.
BLT also believes that some sort of heat source, perhaps microwaves, is blowing holes in the plant's nodes.
What happens, the tissue is too tough, it's too fibrous, it will not expand. And as the steam builds up, it simply blows a hole right out in the node itself.
BLT contends that the heat is generated by an atmospheric energy. Physicist Terence Meaden first proposed that atmospheric forces might create crop circles back in the 1980s. He theorized that a plasma vortex, something akin to an electrical tornado, could swirl down the crops. Eyewitnesses have reported both whirlwinds and balls of light over crop circles. But there's a problem. No one has yet proved that plasma vortices even exist. That doesn't worry BLT. They believe that 90% of all the circles they've tested were made by plasma vortices. They point to the fantastic shapes in nature as proof that a plasma vortex could create such a complex formation. Speaking personally, Nancy thinks this energy may be trying to communicate with us.
My personal experiences have suggested the possibility that this energy system is conscious, has a consciousness, somehow or other interacts with consciousness.
But Nancy wants people to focus on the science, which she thinks can prove the existence of as yet undiscovered forces.
As these results are made public, I hope they'll inspire more scientists, and eventually we have enough people asking enough questions, maybe we'll have an answer to what this is. I hope so. That's our purpose anyhow.
For skeptic James Randi, however, the plasma vortex theory is full of hot air.
Some people have said that they think that it's caused by vortexes in the air, that there are meteorological phenomena that produce this. Where was it back in the Middle Ages? Do they not have vortexes like this in the Middle Ages? Is this a new development that's happened with meteorology? No, it would not be possible.
When it comes to the scientific reasons behind bent or elongated nodes in wheat, one person has all the answers. The grain doctor. Dr. Bob Cratterville specializes in grains and oilseed crops with the Agricultural Extension Program at the University of Maryland. Bob knows wheat, and he thinks BLT is jumping to conclusions.
It's my estimation that at this point in time, BLT hasn't eliminated all of the natural explanations.
Bob has seen many plants that have been knocked down by natural forces like wind or rain. This knockdown process is called lodging in the agricultural world. And Bob thinks the symptoms shown by crop circle plants seem awfully similar to those seen in other lodged plants, and exactly what you'd expect from human trampling.
What we have here is a picture of the bent nodes that are described by BLT. And what you can see is on the one side of the node, it's actually longer than on the other side, which would be the natural response a wheat plant would have when it's lodged. Its goal is to return itself to an upright position, so you get a lengthening on the one side of the node, the opposite side away from the sun, curving that plant's growth back upwards.
Bob is less certain about the cause of the blown nodes. But he wonders why only the nodes would be blown by a heat source. Surely the entire plant would be steamed, not just the nodes.
This is a picture of what BLT refers to as the blown nodes, when in reality this could actually be the result of the plant responding to the stress, growing very rapidly, and splitting apart.
But what concerns Bob most of all is that BLT's website suggests there are no grain doctors on their team.
I was amazed that they didn't have anyone who was well-versed in the areas of wheat production, no crop physiologists, they had no plant pathologists, they had no entomologists, they had not even any generalists or agronomists as part of that team.
That leaves the balls of light, or BOLs. They certainly make for some compelling videotape, but are they for real? What does skeptic Ted Clay make of BOLs?
These things are being called balls of light, but where's the light coming from? And a key question with any of these is, are they generating their own light, or is this light that's coming from somewhere else, the sun? The three top explanations that come to my mind are hoaxes, birds, and wind-blown objects.
To find out if balls of light can be convincingly faked, we decided to fake some. Then we compared our footage to other people's videos. All we needed was some bags and a fishing pole. And after just a few attempts, we made some pretty convincing balls of light. Of course, this doesn't mean that all balls of light are fakes, but it does show how ordinary objects, even seeds, can look like balls of light. So what about the most famous balls of light in crop circle history? This is the Oliver's Castle video, one of the most sensational pieces of evidence yet produced to connect balls of light with the creation of a crop circle. It began to make the rounds the same day the circle formed. Many believers were convinced that it was authentic.
This is amazing.
What strikes Ted Clay as suspicious is how the video maker acted.
If you were taking a video and suddenly two balls of light flew into the image, what would you do with your camera? You would follow the balls of light. In the Oliver Castle video, the camera never really moves. The other thing is the sound.
This is amazing.
Imagine if you were taking a video of balls of light creating a crop circle. Would your words be, "That's amazing"? Just doesn't fit.
His verdict?
It's a hoax.
He's correct, unless you're a giant conspiracy theorist. One day at dawn, John Waby, a worker at a video production company, spotted a new crop circle. Inspiration struck. He grabbed his camera and started taping.
I just really thought it would be quite a good wheeze to see how they reacted if that footage was placed in front of them. And that's what I did.
The hoax was completed in a matter of hours. A video editor copied a section of wheat from another part of the field and pasted it over the formation to make it look like the field pre-circle. Then he threw in a few balls of light, dissolved the superimposed wheat from the inside out, and a crop circle forms before our eyes.
This is amazing.
Waby then took the tape to a pub frequented by crop circle enthusiasts, where it stirred up a frenzy that continues to this day. Some believers remain convinced that the video is real, and some think John Waby is a puppet for the government or military, trying to cover up something more sinister. At the end of almost every crop circle season, someone, or something, likes to end it all with a bang. This year, it's a monster formation of the type that could push Farmer Hughes to breaking point.
Yeah, this is the circle that was created on our farm last week, and my comments on it really is sheer horror at the size of it. It's a hectare, which is 2.5 acres, is 100 metres by 100 metres, and we probably lost the yield of 10 tonnes of wheat off that, which equates to 600 or 700 pounds. They tell me it's something to do with doomsday, there's 12 days left or whatever there might be. It's, in my very humble opinion, it's a little old codswallop. It's another elaborate crop circle that people have done. Their graffiti in our fields
And I'm just very fed up with it.
Believers say it's a Mayan calendar that predicts the end of the world in 2012. For Farmer Hughes, it's the last straw. The wheat is finally ripe and dry enough to harvest, and all Farmer Hughes wants to do is cut down some of the circles. First on his list is the circle commissioned for this program. Harvest time spells the end of the crop circle season for believers and skeptics alike. But one thing seems certain. Next year, the circles will be back. Whether they'll be changing any minds is another matter altogether.
I think the mystery of crop circles is part of its magic. It's the unknowing, it's all this wonderful space in the middle between the skeptics and the believers that creates this incredible forum for this whole debate about the nature of reality. There's been nothing like it in modern history for doing that.
I'd like to see a crop circle 3 counties wide. You know, that would impress me. Or I'd like to see a crop circle in a Christmas tree farm. That would impress me.
People who believe in the crop circles, I think that they just need to get an interesting hobby. Maybe spend more time with the family, collect stamps, do something that's perhaps a tad more useful than going out in the fields and oohing and awing and measuring crops to find out whether or not the UFOs made them. Get a life.
There certainly seems to be some sort of intelligence at work in the fields. But is there any reason to believe that the intelligence isn't human?